You're watching Twin Tiers Sunday with Renata Steele.
Hello and welcome to Twin Tiers Sunday. I'm Renata Steele with WENY TV News, and this week we are learning more about Glove House, a very visible and well-known and respected charity here in the Southern Tier. You may have passed by the actual Glove House administrative offices in Elmira. Beautiful Victorian home, and but it goes so much further than that. They really serve such a wider area than just the city of Elmira and Chemung County. So this week I'm talking with John Trahey, who's the president and CEO, and Donna Corbin, who's the director of specialized services for Glove House. I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come on and learn more about what you do and what the kids that you're serving do in the community. But John, for people who are not familiar with Glove House, maybe they've driven by the home, they've seen the sign, it's very recognizable logo that you have, but they're not familiar with what the agency is. Let's start with a little background info.
Sure. First off, thank you for asking us to be here. We were founded as an organization in 1970 by a very well-known figure in the community at the time. His name was Chuck Jennings. Chuck was a middleweight boxer and had quite a reputation in the boxing community. When he retired and moved back to the Elmira area, he was very concerned about the number of, at the time, young men that he found in the community, poor education, no real job skills, and just sort of basically hanging out on the streets. And it was also a time, if we go back to that time period, it was also a time of great racial turmoil across the country, and that was certainly true in our community at the time as well. Chuck did an amazing job at that point in time in really rallying the Elmira community and got them to understand the needs and the importance of these young men having futures. They did what was called the Bucks for Boys campaign at the time to raise money. And with the funds they raised, they bought that beautiful red Victorian home that's on Church Street in Elmira, which is now known as our Jennings home. We renamed it a few years ago to the Jennings home, and it's now home for 12 boys. And Chuck had a vision that every child needed to be protected and every child needed to have a future, and that's certainly what we carry on today. Each and every day for us is continuing to espouse and to live the vision of Chuck and his better half. Her name is Nellie Jennings, and Nellie still lives in the community, is very involved with us as an organization. And has certainly kept me apprised of the history and the importance of what we do each and every day. As you said, we are a significantly different agency today than we were even 10 years ago, where we historically were primarily a group home agency that served the Elmira community. We now have a number of group homes. We have 6 different group homes. We serve about a 12-county area. Wow. We serve counties basically through the Finger Lakes and the Southern Tier area of New York State. Donna is responsible for a very large foster care component of our agency. We also have independent living apartments for young people 18 to 21. We do a lot of school-based services. We do a lot of family court-related services. One of the things I don't think people realize is that as an agency, we employ about 180 people, wow. So we're a fairly large employer in the community. We have about a $10 million operating budget. So it is oftentimes when I say the word Glove House, people will say, oh, that's that red house on Church Street. And that is certainly who we were for a long time, but we're a much different agency today.
And now you mentioned that beautiful home is a group home, and you've got many throughout the area. How is it that young people, children, end up being placed into a group home?
Well, they come through a variety of ways, but most of the kids that young people that live in our group homes will come through with the local Department of Social Services, and these are children and families that are experiencing some level of crisis in their life. It could be unemployment, Certainly poverty oftentimes plays an issue. It could be some developmental disabilities on the parts of the children. So they come through with a variety of issues, and you know, the important thing for people to understand is that we work with children and families that they're not bad people, they're not bad kids. They're kids that have had some really horrible things happen around them that oftentimes will impact how they behave and what we see visually when we're around some of our kids. And again, we adopted several years ago what's called the sanctuary model. And one of my proudest moments was the fact that we were the first children's service agency in the country to get our certification in this particular model. And it really is a model that helps staff and children and families understand trauma, the impact that trauma has on their behavior, and most importantly, how to heal from those traumas.
And now, Donna, I'm sure that you can attest to this. It seems like many of the children who find themselves in this program, whether it's being placed in a group home or placed into foster care, we'll talk about foster care a little bit more in the next segment, but it's really through no fault of their own.
Correct. Life has happened to them, and a lot of times the events that happen cause problems for either the child or the family, and our goal is always reunification whenever it's safe, and safety is our #1 priority. So in both foster care and the children in the group home, we're working with the families to overcome the barriers that have gotten them into care to begin with.
And as far as the group home is concerned, is there a typical length of time that they end up staying there? You know, you mentioned that reunification is always the goal, but I'm sure there are some children that may end up, their stay may be a little bit more extended than another child.
One of the things that we've tried to do within our agency is develop a continuum of services, so that we go from community family-based services through the group home, which is certainly our highest level of care. And we try to have the youngsters in the group home for as little period of time as possible. In fact, we had our annual talent show last night where our kids display their talents. And one of the young ladies sang a song called "This Is My Temporary Home." And it's very true. And so average length of stay, and again, it varies, but the average is about 8 months. We have some young people that will stay longer than that, and we have some that may come in just for a period of a couple of weeks, and we find ourselves doing more and more of that crisis. It's really stabilization work, doing some assessments about what's happening to that child and what's happening with that family, and what types of services, not only services that Glove House provides, but what other services there are in the community that we can, what we call, wrap around that child and family so that they can return home. You know, Donna mentioned the word safety. That's paramount to us, and that's our primary responsibility, is individual safety for the child, family safety, and community safety. So it's really, that's where we gauge, is when we feel a child is safe to step down to a lower level of care. It may be a foster home. They may go into, if they're older, they may go into one of our apartments. And if they go back home, we will be providing services to them and their families at home. So, you know, the continuum is really important for us, because it allows us to move kids through the system at the pace that they need.
Absolutely. Well, we were going to continue our conversation coming up at the next segment, learn a little bit more about foster parenting and Glove House role in getting these kids to give back to their community, some of the things that the kids are getting out there and doing. So we're going to learn more about that as the show goes on, but please stick around. You're watching Twin Tiers Sunday.
Twin Tiers Sunday will return in a moment.
And welcome back to Twin Tiers Sunday. I'm Renata Steele. I'm talking with John Trahey, who's the CEO and president of Glove House, and Donna Corbin, who is the director of specialized services. So Donna, we just touched on real briefly in the last segment about foster care, and some children who go through Glove House find themselves in foster care, maybe placed there if they don't need quite the supervision, I guess, they would receive
Sure.
in the group home. But they end up in a foster care, they get placed with a family, again, with the goal of reunification, being put back with their families. I guess there's always a need for foster families. How do you decide which child, and how does the placement process work?
There is always a need for foster families, and there are kids in our communities that are in group home programs or in residential programs because Glove House or other agencies in the community can't match them to the appropriate home. So the local district, or in Chemung County or Broome County, gives us a referral packet, and we review the history that we know about the child, and then as a staff we sit down and we talk and we say, well, this family, this is the kind of child they do great working with, or this other family, and we match. And then anything we know about the child and the family, we share with the foster family. And then we do pre-placement visits, and we try and get them to meet, and we try and get weekend visits, and then ultimately we do register the child for school wherever they're going to be living, and they move in. The difference between Glove House and other agencies are we have incredibly high expectations of our foster parents. We also have incredibly high expectations of our staff. So my staff sees foster children and foster families weekly or every other week, depending on their needs. We require 24 hours of annual training per parent. So if you have a spouse and you're a certified foster family, you each have to do 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Some agencies only require 4 hours. We don't think that's really enough. We require our foster families to have CPR and first aid. We have 24 hours on call. Every single one of my staff has a cell phone, and we use them regularly. You can ask John, because our bills are a little high. But we know that our families, when they need us and when they're in crisis, they have to reach out to us, and we are always there to answer their call. The birth families are partners in the process. So all of our foster families go through a training called MAP, which helps them learn about foster care and what it's going to be. But then after they complete MAP, they also go through shared parenting.
Now, I'm sure for the kids, this is a huge adjustment for them to be placed with a foster family. And you mentioned getting the birth parents involved, because I'm sure that, of course, it's a huge adjustment for them as well, and in some cases, traumatic to have their children removed from their home.
Absolutely.
Even if it's something, if it has to do with their behaviors or their actions, it's still something horrible for them.
All parents love their children. That's the bottom line. We all come to parenthood with different life experience. So I truly believe all parents do the best they can do at any given point in time. And so when we're working with birth parents, we do our best to help educate them and help give them the supports that they need so their children can return home. But it is a choice. So there are times where parents choose to not maybe get into a recovery program, or they choose to remain in a relationship that's unsafe for their children, and then the courts decide that the children can't go home. And if that happens, then our foster families do have the option to adopt, and many of them continue visitation with the birth family long after the adoption has been successful and finalized. And that's part of shared parenting as well.
Okay, and now you were actually telling me before the show about a little girl who ended up being adopted into a family. Can you kind of,
Correct.
Without getting into too many identifying details,
Right.
talk about her story and a special note that she'd written to you?
Well, she had come into care with her younger brother at the time, and they were placed in the same foster home. And there were some pretty high needs at the very beginning. And we do this thing every year with our foster children where they write letters to themselves with their goals or their visions or their prayers for the coming year. And then we seal them in an envelope, and a year later I pull them out of the drawer and we throw them in the mail. And that year there happened to be one for me. And I opened it, and it was from a little girl who all she wanted was to live with Kimmy for forever with her brother, and she wanted to be a cowboy, and some other issues wanted resolved. And by the time I had opened the letter a year later, she had been adopted by Kimmy. Her brother had also been adopted, and she got a cowboy hat on the day of her adoption. So her dreams actually did come true, which just warms my heart. And we have her note here for you to see. So.
And of course, I'm sure that you try in as many cases as possible, if there are multiple siblings, to try to keep them together.
Correct. There is a desperate need for families that can handle large sibling groups. We oftentimes will reject children for placement just based on the fact that we can't keep the siblings together. And we've had sibling sets of 4, 5, and 6 adopted by one family, and we've also had sibling sets of 10 that we couldn't place anywhere because we didn't have anybody with a house big enough.
Wow. And now, John, if you're always looking for foster families, if people are watching and they feel like they would be a good fit, that they could open up their homes and they have some love to share to children in need, how can they, what's the application process for being a foster parent?
Well, they would contact Donna's office, and then as Donna said, the home study process would begin. And this is challenging. It's challenging work. You know, being a parent, just being a parent is challenging, and certainly, you know, most of our kids come in with some issues. So, you know, it's really paramount that people have a love and a desire to want to help a child. I talk about all the time, whether a child is in a foster home, in one of our group homes, our work is really about giving kids opportunities to succeed. And with whatever they do, whether it be their academic work, whether it be getting employment, whether it was doing their performance last night in the talent show, it's really about helping kids have an opportunity to succeed and to just have opportunities they wouldn't necessarily have. And it's the same thing, same expectation from our foster parents.
We require our foster parents to have specific training. We do criminal background checks. We do state central registry checks. I want to know that any foster parent can take care of my own biological children. And if I don't want them taking care of my children, why do I want them taking care of anybody else's? So when we're in the process of training and recruiting, that's a question that my staff asks themselves all the time. Will Donna let her children live there? And if the answer is no, then we can't have them as foster parents.
And I think that's a very good, you know, kind of a benchmark to set. And, you know, you're exactly right. If you wouldn't keep your own biological children in their care,
Right.
Exactly. Well, we want to talk more about Glove House and how they're getting kids involved in their communities, how these children who are in need are also giving back. So we're going to talk more about that in our last segment of Twin Tier Sunday.
Twin Tier Sunday will return in a moment.
Welcome back to our final segment of Twin Tier Sunday. We're talking about Glove House. We've talked about the group home aspect, the sanctuary model. We've talked about the foster care and the loving foster homes that the children are placed in based on their situation. And now, John, you were telling me that not only are you there to take in these kids who are in need, but you also really are teaching them some life lessons and helping them give back to their communities. And just one of the ways that you're doing that is through community service.
Correct. Well, you know, people will oftentimes ask me, you know, well, how successful are you at Glove House? And I base success on permanency. We've talked about that a little bit. We've been very successful, Donna and her staff, in terms of getting many of these kids permanent homes. The other part of it for me is education and valuing the communities that you live in. And so we spend a lot of time with our young people, getting them to understand what's been given to them, despite some of the difficulties that they've had. So we're very active in the communities. We have one of the largest groups that walks in the Walk a Mile in My Shoe suicide walk each spring. We also do things like the river cleanup, planting of flower beds in the city of Elmira. After the hurricane, we had a group that went up to the monastery on Church Street, a large group of not only young people but our staff, and helped them clean up from the damage that they had during the hurricane. So it's really important to us to have our kids realize the value of community, and it also gives our community a chance, which I find very interesting. It gives our community a chance to interface with some of our young people and get an experience that they say, wow, they're just like any other kid, and they really are. And so this is something we've really focused a lot of time and energy on. We do some work at the WENY Davis Community Center. They were recently named our award winner for our Leadership for Children Award. But our young people also go up there and help prepare meals and that type of thing. So it's been a nice experience to watch our young people. Sometimes they grumble when they first go out to do it, and then they find themselves really having a good time and enjoying it.
And there's some big community service projects and some small ones. And at the Booth School now, there's a Love It, Keep It library. And when books are donated, the youth that are involved in the evening support program, they come and haul all the books from the parking lot, put them on the shelves, and get started. And those books are accessible to anyone in the community, but specifically the youth in that program and the Head Start that's located at that school.
Okay.
And if the youth like the book, they get to keep it. And if they don't like it, they put it back, so maybe somebody else will fall in love with it.
And of course, we know how important it is to get kids to love reading.
Well, and I do have to interject that library was started by Donna's oldest son as a project, and collected several hundred books to start the library for us over there.
And now you serve such a large service area and so many children and families. Where does your funding come from? Because you are a nonprofit, but you do so much, and it costs a lot to raise a child and provide care for children, whether they're in the group home or the foster care, or going through the court system. That's expensive.
Well, and depending on where the child is in our system, the funding is different. If a child is in one of our group homes or one of Donna's foster homes, there's a split between the state of New York and the county of origin that the child comes to us from. And our rates for those programs are set by the state of New York. So it's not what we decide we need to take care of that child. It's what New York State decides they're willing to pay us. We also have a number of services that are grant funded, and the dilemma with grant funded programs is sometimes those grants go away and you're running a really good service, so then you're trying to find other funding sources. What we find today is that we really rely more and more on the charities of the communities that we serve, and people recognizing the good work that we do. We do 2 appeals a year to the community to help us financially. We, on occasion, we have 2 homes that are on the historic register in the city of Elmira, and last spring we were faced with replacing a roof on one of them. The cost was $45,000, and I found myself turning to our very generous donors, and we do have a wonderful base of donors to help us offset the cost for doing that roof. So, one of the things I really want people to realize is that we are a children's charity, and the community helping us to take care of these children and families is critically important to us.
And now, Donna, if someone wants to learn more about the foster care process, how can they?
They can call our home finder, Bruce Sharp, or I might answer the phone myself, and the number is 877-687-1265, and that is a toll-free number.
Okay. And now, John, if they just have general questions about Glove House, whether they want to donate their time, donate supplies, or donate money, or just want to learn more, who can they get in touch with, and how do they contact Glove House?
Well, our administrative office is located on Franklin Street, right next door to St. Mary's Church. The phone number there is area code 607-734-5238. Certainly, I'd be more than willing to talk to anybody that has questions, wants more information. If not myself, they can contact my assistant, who is Sherry Mandel. Again, it's 607-734-5238.
And now you have a website
Correct.
as well.
Yep. We have a website, www.glovehouse.org, and we also have a Facebook page, Glovehouse Family and Children's Services. So if they go to our Facebook page, they'll see a lot of pictures of some of the fun activities that we participate in with our kids.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, John and Donna. I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Thank
coming
you.
on the show and talking about Glove House and what the wonderful things that you're doing for the community and for the children here in the Southern Tier. And we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Twin Tier Sunday. We hope you have a wonderful day.